Welcome to the Spotlight segment. This is a segment dedicated to interviews with developers or interesting happenings in the world of Android. And now for this week's episode, here's your Spotlight. We now move on to our Spotlight segment, and back in the year of our Lord 1805, there was a company called Microsoft and another one called Apple, and there was a marriage, and there we had something called Soundscape. Well, guys, you got my exaggeration there, but I'm so delighted to welcome wonderful people from Scotland, from the UK, to talk about something we've been talking about here on Android, most especially on our mailing list, on our Telegram groups, and that's the Soundscape for Android. And I can't say exactly how I feel. In other words, I do not have enough words with which to express myself in thanking these guys for making the impossible possible. We have guys from the Soundscape group. I would like them to introduce themselves. Kirsty, we're going to start with you and your team and introduce us, and then we'll get started about talking about Soundscape. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting us. My name is Kirsty Macintosh, and I am a director of the Scottish Tech Army, which is the organisation that started during the pandemic as a volunteer initiative to help charities and non-profits with their digital challenges during lockdown. But we came across Soundscape, and the organisation, through its amazing volunteers, now has both the iOS version and the Android version. And I'll pass over to Dave.
Hi, I'm Dave Craig. So I'm a somewhat retired software engineer, but I'm spending most of my time working on Soundscape pretty much for the last year. And I'm based just north of Glasgow, just on the edge of the countryside in Scotland. Tunde.
Thank you so much, Dave. My name is Tunde Ojelabe. It's nice meeting everybody here. I'm a volunteer project manager with the Scottish Tech Army. You would typically find me managing and delivering solutions to anybody, anywhere in the world, where they can find meaning and purpose and great joy to use such solutions for their lives. Thank you. I'm based in Scotland as well.
Thank you so much, guys. Well, I started with that exaggerated thing that back in the year of our Lord 1805. Now, really, so you guys were not originally, tell me something, were you guys part of Soundscape when Microsoft brought it to the Apple devices? Was that, I don't remember the year, was it 2017, 2016? Really, I don't even remember when it was, but I know for a while we've been asking for it, and Microsoft has sent actually surveys to our groups, and nothing happened. And then they discontinued it entirely. And I met the lady, one of the ladies who started it. She is doing a PhD last year rather, or late 2023. And she was telling me she was a little bit saddened that they had to, forego the project and all of that, because I was going to give her a bad time as to why they didn't do it for Android. And so, but here you guys are working on something that Microsoft was unable to give us. Talk to us about whether or not you guys were part of that initial thing on iOS or not. And if not, then when did you guys actually feel the need to get it started for Android, something that is just impossibility,
Well, that's on me. So we weren't involved in the original project, no. We found out about it as an organisation in April 2023. And by that point, the iOS version had been withdrawn from the Apple Store, and that the service that was running was going to be shut down later on in 2023. I'm actually a trustee of a visual impairment charity, and it was somebody in the charity that notified me that they were going to lose the app, and they were really devastated, and they wanted to try to find a way to stop it from being switched off. But I realized that Microsoft had actually made all of that code, 7 years of research and investment. They'd actually made it available under an open source license. So we went and had a look at it, and we actually put a small team from the global consultancy PwC, who were volunteering with us to go and have a look at the open source code and tell us what state it was in and what it would take to make a copy of it and basically, reinstate the app, if you like, so that it was exactly the same as the original version. And from that initial work that PwC did, an amazing group of independent volunteers got together and assembled the iOS version, and we turned ours on, I think, the day that Microsoft turned theirs off. And it was identical to the original app, so that people that were using it, could be confident that it was exactly the same thing. And as far as the Android version is concerned, actually, it was Dave and a couple of other volunteers, a chap called Adam Ward, who had worked on the iOS version for us. And he was going, we need to do this for Android. And in essence, Dave and the team there with Tunde and others they've just quietly got on with it. Warren, they've just done it and just surprised us all actually a few weeks ago by pushing it in live beta into the Play Store.
First of all, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, though. Is any of you guys blind? Because that's usually also important.
No.
No, none of us are visually impaired or blind.
Well, I'll be. So, Dave, let's start with you. You're the one of the engineers and all of that. Why did you think that you want to do something for Android, something that people think it's an impossibility? Because we hear this cry all the time. Android is so hard to develop for because, we've got several different, manufacturers and different whatevers and, skins and all of that. So it's absolutely virtually impossible to develop anything for Android. And here you guys, have done the, impossible. So Dave, talk about that and how you got started about doing this, because what your thoughts were you afraid of it? Did you think twice? Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah. So I think ignorance comes into it quite heavily. So my background was, I've been a software engineer for 30 years. I've worked the last 20 years in audio and video, and my whole career was in audio and video products. So I worked in mixing consoles and laterally in digital signage, and so I did a lot of video and audio. And I knew when I retired, I was like, well, I was retired fairly young, and I thought, well, I'm going to still write some software because that's where I can, do something useful. And it just so happened at that time that Soundscape, that the Scottish Tech Army, and I'm in Scotland, and they were doing an open day kind of thing, and I watched that, and they talked about Soundscape on iOS. I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. And then they were like, oh, we're going to do an Android one, and it just so happened that Soundscape has 3D audio, as they call it, in it. And 35 years ago, I did a master's thesis at university on 3D audio. 3D audio was like this weird niche thing for literally 25 years, and then suddenly it's kind of taken off a bit more. So originally, when I was planning on learning some Android apps, so I worked in kind of low-level Linux, and it was for products. So I worked on MP3 players and things without user interfaces. But I was planning on learning some Android because it just seemed like quite a good platform for lots of interesting things. And I was interested in maps as well. So I used to do a lot of orienteering, which is a very niche map-based sport in my youth. It's quite big in the area of Scotland I grew up in. And so when Android came along, I was like, well, I could do the audio bit. That's fine. I could do that. That's easy. And then slowly I kind of started moving into the mapping stuff because I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And so it was purely, interest. It's an interesting problem. And the fact that there's this pool of people who, really want it and it can be useful to, well, that's, it gives you a reason to do it. So that's really how I got involved in it.
Tunde, let's talk about you. So you're the product management and all of that. So these guys came to you about this project that has not been done before. And how did you convince yourself that, yeah, I think this is something I may want to be part of, even though the word on the street is that development for Android is just an impossibility. How did you feel and what were your thoughts?
Thank you very much for your question. Something akin to Dave's feedback. I would list this in 3 points. Number one, I have a bit of technical background as well, so I have an understanding of what the larger picture is. Number two, I've been fortunate to work in a couple of large enterprise organizations with matrix level reporting. So when we talk about what actually constitutes value to users, to people, on such products and solutions like this that has a global footprint, I'm really, really honestly interested in that. And this is also about people. I had my first degree in sociology in 2005, and it's heavily people focused. So I'm all about making people's lives better, letting people derive value from products and solutions. So when you combine all of that together, I saw the Soundscape Android project as the place to be because there was a lot of interest. It aligns with all the values I call mine. And when we delved into it, we noticed that we had the right team and we had a lot of leadership support as well. And that brought us to where we are today.
That's great to hear. I mean, this has been something we've been pining for years. I mean, we eventually just gave up on it. Like so Microsoft also did Seeing AI, right? It took them 7 years to get a version of that on Android. So we were like, Soundscape's never coming to Android. So we had kind of given up on it, but this has definitely been the biggest news this year, I think, as far as Android apps are concerned. And there are a lot of people excited about it. And I'm curious. So this is either for Dave or Tunde, whoever wants to answer, but I'm curious about the technical aspects of developing for Android when it comes to the source code you guys got from the open source project from Microsoft. Was it written in a way that made it easy to port, or was it kind of like you had to start from scratch and do everything over, or was it kind of a mixture of the two?
So one of the great things about, and what attracted me to the Soundscape for Android app was there was already another app with a user interface that everyone liked. And so surely that aspect means, well, you can just copy the user interface. You can, if you do the same things, you'll end up with an Android version that everyone likes. So that's the kind of starting point. But the code is all written in Swift, which is pretty particular to iOS. Now, we did look at whether it was possible to just convert the code over, using AI magic tools and whatever. But basically, it's like, no, you kind of have to start again. And in some ways, that made sense because a lot of the challenges of doing the Android one haven't really been to do with the code in the iOS app. So I think the things that were easy on iOS, I would say, would have been one. So their graphical map, which is important for some proportion of users. They use Apple Maps, so that's for free. You get that for free. That's great on iOS. The search bar for searching for points of interest, well, that's using Apple Maps, and you get that for free. And then actually the 3D audio on iOS, there's an API that you can put audio, position it around your head, and that's just an API that you call in the code, and so it's quite straightforward. So none of those things are available on Android. And we kind of realized that fairly early on, and in some ways that's what drove us. So we actually, all the code is new. So we've used the beacon sounds, so the sounds are the same. We've used the strings and the translations where possible. So 95% of the text in the app is the same, and that meant we got, I think there's maybe 12 or 15 languages already converted for free. So that was a great start. But all the other code is brand new. And so on the audio side, there was no Android API for doing 3D audio. There is some head tracking stuff in Android and maybe with Pixel Buds, but that was all fairly new, so we haven't supported that yet. And then on the map side, well, we had to generate our own maps and use open source off-the-shelf stuff to show the maps and the graphical UI. And we had to do our own search engine as well. So these are extra bits that are involved in Android. So the good thing is, if it's like, well, if a user comes and says, oh, we just want it to work like iOS, and to be honest, the request was, oh, we want an Android app and we want it for Soundscape and we want it to work like that one, pointing at the iOS one. And so in some ways that makes, you just go into we could go into the iOS code and, I bought a Mac and I bought an iPhone, which, is against all my previous beliefs. And using the iPhone, so I've been wandering around the streets with the iPhone, trying to understand what it is. I know, it's embarrassing. Trying to get a hang of what it is that the app does, and some of the stuff that you don't get from the code, because I think there's no commit history. So normally if you develop an app, you check in some code and then you'll check in some more code and you'll say, oh, this code adds this feature, and then you'll continue doing that. And in the future, when you've forgotten how it all worked, you go back and you look through it and you go, oh yeah, that's why I did that. But because Microsoft had just kind of dumped it into open source, the answers to the why is the code like that isn't there. So that meant there was a bit more stuff where it's like, well, what we didn't know why some things were the way they are, and because of our lack of experience in, well, I'd never written an Android app, I'd never written a Kotlin app, which is the language it uses. I'd never done any accessibility things other than closed captions. So there was all these things to learn along the way, and so there's been a lot of learning, and hopefully we're getting to a point where we have a much better understanding of, well, why the features were in the iOS one, and hopefully we're getting to the, we're, by the time we go into release, we'll be meeting the needs of the users, which is, the whole point of it.
Yeah, that's great. I had a feeling that would be the answer. I mean, it's not. I mean, this is a very complicated app, right? It's not a calculator app where you can, stick it into a converter and convert the code, right? Because you're talking with all kinds of parts of the hardware, whether it be the accelerometer or gyroscope, and like you said, the 3D audio and all that. But I have a couple more questions. One quick question and then a follow-up to it. First being, you mentioned Apple Maps is what you were not able to use in the Android version, which makes sense. So what are you using? Is it OpenStreetMaps that you're using?
Yeah. So we, all of our mapping data is from OpenStreetMap currently. And basically there's a tool that we use, which is awesome, it's called Planetiler, which is an awkward name it looks like Plain Tiler, but it's Planetiler. And basically you can say, okay, I want a map of the world from the current OpenStreetMap data, and you set it off running, and 6 hours later it generates this 145 gigabyte file with a map of the world. And what it's done is it's taken in the OpenStreetMap data and made up a tile for every little segment of the world at 16 different zoom levels. So at zoom level 0, you've got one tile which covers the world, and then at zoom level 15, you've got these little tiles which are about maybe 600 meters across that have every street and every path and whatever was in the OpenStreetMap data. So that's what ends up on the server, and then there's a standard for the graphical map. There's the it's called Map Libra, there was a company called Mapbox, and they were open source, and Map Libra is carried on being the open source bit when they became a company, I think, is the general gist of it. So they do the drawing for the graphical one, and then we've got all our own code, which and this is where we differ quite a lot from the iOS app. So the iOS app had quite a costly server. So, Microsoft owned their servers, and, they ran it on their own servers, and so they didn't really care how much it cost. In order to make it more cost effective, we use the same data that we use for the drawing the graphical map and the map tiles. We use that to generate our kind of data representation of the world. So, which segments of streets, places on the map, all that sort of stuff. So that you can, inside the app, when the app knows where you are, it can then say what's near you, basically.
That's cool. A lot goes into that. I recall hearing, because I did listen to the Double Tap interview, so when you figure out this more efficient way of doing it with Android, you're going to eventually try to put this also in the iOS version. Is that right?
I think that, yeah, I mean, that's the goals are to get the Android version running so that everyone's happy with it and people are using it and it's great. And then at that point, there are a few options for the iOS one. We either take the kind of engine bit that uses the cheap server and much more efficient and put that into the iOS version, or the Android app has been written so that Kotlin, the language it's in, there's a thing called Kotlin multi-platform, and so in theory, and all the experts I've spoken to said, yeah, you can do that. In theory, basically you can build an iOS version from a lot of the same code. So yeah, it would have different GPS bits, and all the times where it touches hardware, it'll be different. But that's a few years away, I would say. Or I could imagine once we've done the Android one, however long, there might be a year of work to do that. So it's in the future view, but it depends on, there might be some volunteers who come in and go, oh, I'd like to do that, in which case, we have something that they can use to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of down the line, so a lot of people are not happy with OpenStreetMaps in their specific regions. They say the data is not good enough. And
especially in the UK, John, because I know Steve always talking about that the OpenStreetMap is not good in the UK.
Yeah,
all places.
So my question is, down the line, would you consider at some point? Now, obviously, Google Maps data or Google Maps is not free, but at some point, would you consider, or do you have to, or is it just not worth doing? You can be honest. Would you consider like adding a paid version?
So there's actually a technical issue there where Google Maps doesn't give you the ability to do any of this. So
so that was an easy.
Yeah, so they can. There, in terms of like, so there are different aspects to this. There's the tiles. So we get it. So where I am at the moment, if I run Soundscape, I'll get a 2x2 grid of map tiles, and our code finds all the roads and paths, joins them all up, makes a little easy search so it can find what's near you. And you just can't do that with Google Maps. It's not designed. It's designed for, you can search for places and you can get information on places, but you can't do road intersection descriptions. So you can't take the road locations out of the data, as far as I understand. I mean, it's the interesting thing about the tiles, even our tiles. So one of the reasons we have to generate our own tiles is that, so at the audio level, most of our audio is generated from the highest zoom level, because it's basically wanting to know everything that's around you. But map tiles, when they're generated to draw a graphical map. And so the way they work, which I find amazing, is that, well, it just starts drawing. It gets a tile and it's got all these layers, and the background layer might be terrain, and then the next layer might be water, and then there might be a primary road layer, a tertiary road layer, a path layer, and it's just, there may be 100 layers in a map, and it just draws them all one on top of each other. And things like junctions just magically happen. So it's just to do with the order things were drawn in. And so they don't even know about intersections. So there's no concept of an intersection. It's just, they're just drawing lines and dots and polygons. So when we generate the maps, we take some steps to make sure that we can spot intersections, because that's a really important part of what we do. But on Google Maps, it's just, it's doing the same thing. It's just providing this data. But in general, I think in Google Maps, you're using the Google Maps API to draw it. And so everything ends up kind of boxed away. To be honest, Soundscape would be way easier if Microsoft had just add this feature into the Google Maps. I mean, I think that's the thing that they should have done. But they're interested in cars driving places is my view, I think.
Yeah.
Our view on this has always been that this must be free at the point of use. We have to find a different way of paying for it. Now, Dave's done an amazing job with the team on the Android version in that they've got it running pretty much about as efficiently as they can. The iOS version needs some work to get it to the same place, but for me, it was extremely important that this was free. I was talking to somebody who made the point of saying, the amount of technology that's out there, assistive technology that's out there for the visually impaired community is wide and varied. There's so much of it, and some of it is just outstandingly extraordinary and wonderful, but it costs money to buy. And this is free. This is anybody with a mobile phone. It is the plan here that they can use this to give some level of independence in their lives when perhaps might otherwise not have had it. So there are no plans to put paid tiers into this. We're having to do some work trying to figure out how it's going to pay for itself in the long term, but we really don't want people to have to pay for it.
So one of the characteristics of a global product is the balances and the trade-offs that you need to take a look at as well. And just like Dave and Kirsty has mentioned, continuous improvement is the key, which is why we want to take as much feedback as possible from the users who are currently using and testing this awesome product, and then see how we can continue to improve this product based on the feedback that they give us, and ultimately to make sure that they're able to use it in the most cost-efficient way. But a lot is going to speak for itself for the future. However, our goal in the interim, just like Kirsty has mentioned, is availability to anybody, anywhere across the globe, irrespective of the differences. And that is priority for now for us.
That's good to hear. I mean, we a lot of us expect things to be free, which I don't always agree with. But when it is free, it's like you said, it's huge for accessibility. All over the world, a lot of people, can't afford this sort of thing. So it's good to hear that you guys are going to keep it free. I think I made the mistake in assuming that the reason you went with OpenStreetMap rather than Google Maps is because of the cost involved. But to hear that it's a technical limitation, I shouldn't have jumped to that conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, there are aspects, there are things that we can improve on. It's interesting. And so I know Steve in the UK had problems certainly in his area with OpenStreetMap. I mean, one of the great things about OpenStreetMap is it just keeps getting better. So it's actually, I mean, the project started in the UK, but it does vary depending where you are, and it's all mapped by volunteers. But one of the cool things about it, and it was certainly a cool thing that Soundscape or iOS made use of, was the fact that if somebody says, well, it's not well mapped in my area, it's actually quite straightforward to get other people to go and fix that. And it's not like it takes a few months for it to appear in a map. It'll actually appear in the OpenStreetMap data as soon as you hit apply. I mean, it's kind of scary, but there we go. But
it's like the Wikipedia of maps, right?
It is absolutely. And so the amount of mapping, and in some areas, some places have been, I'm not going to say over mapped, but they're mapped to incredibly high precision. So if you walk around the old town in Edinburgh, like every bollard is mapped, which isn't awfully useful for us because, I mean,
too much work.
Well, yeah, it's like you've got to process that and say, well, do I need to know the bollard? It's like, well, when your GPS is only so accurate, it's like, well, it doesn't really help me to know if there's a bollard within 10 meters of me because there are 100 bollards within 10 meters of me. So, but the good thing that is that OpenStreetMap is also growing and improving. And so I know Steve had problems in the past. I would be interested to know whether it is still the same. But I also understand that if you've been bitten by that in the past, it's maybe not so obvious. I mean, how do you, I don't know, you guys would have to tell me, I mean, how do you know if it's changed? Yeah, that's a tricky one. How do you know it's improved?
Now, there's something I really want to thank you guys for, most especially knowing that you guys are not blind and yet you are so passionate about this. And something that Tunde said earlier on that really caught my attention, is that it's about people. And, Kirsty, reiterated that. And so I'm so thankful that actually we have people that have this kind of mindset of wanting to help people, because oftentimes it's not easy. Now I'm looking at a lot of things that we have on Android that, subscription based and all of that. And it's oftentimes very difficult for some of our brethren in other parts of the world to be able to get this. But, I think that when it comes to it all, and most people think that the world begins and ends here in the West, then it becomes a problem, because I'm looking at my brethren maybe in the Middle East or Africa, Asia, and all of that. And I was in Africa a little while ago, and, tons and tons of people use the Android phone. And to see that we have something of this nature that they too could use. And to my surprise, Dave, you'd mentioned on our mailing list that actually Cameroon in Africa, actually, or a certain place in Cameroon, I don't remember the name of the city you mentioned now, that actually has a lot of things properly mapped. So I was blown away by that. And so I'm really thankful that you guys are mindful of the fact that we have other folks elsewhere outside of our little world here out in the West. And so kudos to you guys. I tip my hat to you guys.
Wow, that's very kind of you. Thank you very much, Warren. Could I just please give a shout out? There's some other volunteers who aren't on this call who've made a massive contribution to this project. There's only 2 or 3 names. Would it be all right if I just thank them on your podcast as well?
Of course.
Absolutely. We want to know, the brands behind all of this and all the contributors and the people that are actually, spending their time, just to make things happen for us. Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, obviously we've got Dave and Tunde on the call today, and Dave's been right there from the very earliest stages of the Android version, and Tunde's been pretty much wrapped up in it for some time now as well. But Adam Ward, as I mentioned earlier, was somebody who actually worked on the reinstating the iOS version. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but in essence, he had to teach himself how to code for Android, and he had never used Kotlin before, and he made a massive contribution to this one. We also have and he's down in the southwest of England, and then we had Fanny Demey, who is a wonderful French developer, a chap called Andy Thau, and also Amira Fahem, who were all involved in the project as well. And I just want to extend my thanks to all of them, and Dave and Tunde on this call as well, where, it's incredible what you've done, and you've done it without any, need for us to push on or anything like that at all. So we're very grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
First, thank you very much for your really appreciated word. That's great. And I have a question. It's not specifically about the soundscapes. It's about the company itself. If I understand correctly, the main focus isn't blind related. So it's a project that's not specifically about blind products. And you ventured into blind specific stuff by developing the soundscapes, or actually by continuing the development of soundscapes. So are there any other projects that are like related to app development? Any other interesting projects that you would like to talk about?
Thanks for the question, Karine. This organization is actually predominantly about helping nonprofits maximize the systems that they already have, or giving them new technology that will make them more efficient, so they can make the money that they do fundraise go further and improve their reach. So actually, app development is something that, generally speaking, we tend not to get too involved in, because, as Dave has said, he's been working on this for a year. And for many of our volunteers, it's a heck of a commitment to ask them to give to a project. So there's not a massive amount of app development out there, but there is a little bit. It's not specifically related to the visually impaired world at all. We're very, very open to requests and asks, and where need is identified. That's effectively what we're here for. So if we can find a way to fill a gap that's not being filled elsewhere, then we will certainly attempt to do it. We do have to be careful about the sustainability of developing some of these things. We've had to work very, very hard to keep Soundscape, online, if you like, and funded properly. And we're still doing a lot of work in that area. And we're absolutely committed to keeping the lights on. And we don't want to find ourselves in a situation again where Soundscape could be switched off the way it was potentially going to be switched off in 2023. So we need to be very careful that we're not building tools because it's fun to build them, without actually having a commitment to how that's actually going to get paid for in the longer term. But yeah, we're open to ideas. I mean, we've done very simple things as well. We built an Alexa skill for a visual impairment charity in the northeast of England, effectively, that puts their podcast and their newsletter, into an Alexa skill so that people could access it from home. So we're open to any and all requests. If we can't help, we do try to kind of pass on those requests to those who might be able to support them instead.
Thank you very much. That's really interesting. Just my last question: if people want to support the organization, do you have a page for donation?
This is going to sound ridiculous, but no, we don't. But if they want to contact us at scottishtecharmy.org, then I'm very happy to have a conversation about that. We are doing some hard work around how we do this for the very long term. But if anybody feels overwhelmingly that they want to donate, then if they can contact us through the page on scottishtecharmy.org, and we can have a conversation about that. Thank you, Karen.
I mean, the best way to contribute is if people are interested in volunteering. People who have been monitoring the various groups will see my name's been cropping up an awful lot in emails and help desk requests and all this sort of thing. And we do, we are all volunteers. And if anyone's interested in helping out on any of the areas to do with the app, that would be gratefully received help. So, the sort of things we have is, They're the kind of things that, if you were a company, you might have, well, somebody's monitoring the help desk and email groups, maybe providing answers and help and support, but also testing. So so there's a new version went out this morning, so that's Saturday morning, and Play Store is set up so it's got some amazing flow of testing things, so you can publish it to internal testing, and then you promote it to closed testing, and then eventually it makes it out into open testing, which is where everyone who's currently using it without giving me their email address is currently using it. And if anyone's interested in getting the early releases and helping test, now some of that helping test is just going to be, well, just use it like you normally would, that kind of testing. But we also, there is a small short document which is like how to test the release, which is just a step-by-step going through every feature. It maybe takes 10 minutes, but if somebody doing that on a phone that isn't my phone, is maybe running in Arabic, is maybe side-loaded with the variety of screen readers or text-to-speech engines, that's really useful stuff. And that's, if anyone's interested in helping with that, definitely get in touch with Scottish Tech Army via the help desk. So I think that's support Android. I should have written this down.
Kirsty, can you come to his salvation?
Yes, I can. I can.
Maybe just to add a bit to that, it's just to add a bit of flesh to what Dave was talking about in terms of the product service management for this particular product. We have categories like testing, like Dave was mentioning, and of course, categories like the monitoring of the feedback. As we all know, when it was a 20-user community, the level of I need help will be different from when it's going to be a 1,000-user community. And definitely we need more people to be able to, or more volunteers to take a look at assigned tickets and stuff. We are also talking about help in terms of translation into the different languages, because I can confidently tell you that we had a request to translate to about 6 or 5 languages in a fortnight, and we are still doing that, and we do that through Weblate. And the good thing is that we are properly documented for most of these processes to be able to get to where we need to be. So in terms of the life cycle for product service management, anybody who is interested can definitely get in touch and go through a simple process and then join the community to help and assist us to achieve these things. Thanks.
Thank you, Tunde. The email address is soundscapeandroid@scottishtecharmy.support. Thank you.
Now let's talk about something, because we've been talking about Soundscape. I know we're kind of taking a lot of your time here, guys. Dinner time out there, Dave and Tunde and Kirsty. However, you guys have volunteered to forego dinner for tonight. So let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about the app itself. Someone is hearing us talking about Soundscape now, wondering what in the world is Soundscape. How about one of you, or all three of you, if you will, tell us what it is? It's not necessarily like an app that gives you like a turn-by-turn instruction, does it? However, it tells you the streets that you come across. So, for example, I live here in the city of Maxi, and thanks, Dave, for looking me up in Maxi. Now, for example, so I want to go to my post office, and I first, though, have to know how to get there, right? I know it's going to give me the beacon, but it's not going to tell me what streets to go on, right? Am I getting that correct? So you guys talk about that and explain to people what Soundscape is all about when it comes to navigation. I mean, for me, it does what I've always wanted. I just want to wander around town, but know where I'm, the streets that I'm coming up across. That's what I want. I call it the get to know my city kind of mode, and that's what I've been looking for rather, and to see that, I'm excited.
I'll have a go at that. So yeah, So I use it for getting to know my city as well. So there are kind of two aspects to it. There's the audio beacons, which is one aspect, and then there's the describing your environment, which is the second one. So, and you can use them both, or some people use maybe just the audio beacons. So I'll talk about the audio beacons first. So in the app, you can set up markers at different locations, and then you can string those markers together into a route, which you can then play back. And when you play back a route, it starts with the first marker in the route, and it starts playing a sound that on the headphones you're listening on sounds like it's coming from the direction of that location. I've got to refine how I describe that, but
if anybody, this might help describe it. If anybody has played an accessible video game, like for example, The Last of Us, a lot of times what they do is they use audio cues to let the player know, okay, now you need to go in this direction. And that's why it's very important to use headphones for these games, because it literally sounds like you're following the sound of something. So, you know, if it's stronger in your left ear than it is in your right ear, then you need to turn a little bit left and start heading that direction. So, sorry to interrupt there, but a lot of our listeners might be familiar with that. So
that's
I just
much better.
put that out there.
Yeah. So as you start walking, so if you're holding the phone in your hand, then it uses the direction the phone is pointing. But you can just put the phone in your bag, and then as you walk, it figures out which way you're walking really quickly, the direction you're walking, and then the marker you'll hear the marker from where it is. So it's kind of like if I put the marker at the end of my street, it's kind of like having someone at the end of my street shouting at me the whole time in a quite nice, pleasant background way. And so you can, as you change direction, as you cross the road, as you go around a corner, you'll hear the beacons kind of move to your left and to your right. And as you get close to it, and when you arrive at it, if it's in a route, then it'll then move to the next marker. So the idea is that that aspect just helps give you some confidence about the direction you're going in relative to a beacon. Some people use it where they don't do a route, and then they're at a location and they know they want to get back to it, so they can start an audio beacon at their current location, and then they can move around, and they can always know which direction to go to get back to their beacon. So that's the kind of audio beacon side of things. And there are different sounds you can get for the audio beacons, and some of them are just kind of little, every 5-6 seconds, a little beep, and they sound different when you're facing them. So as well as sounding in your left or right, if you're facing them directly, they have a little more sparkle to them. So it just helps you determine. But it is very video game like. Yeah, absolutely, John. So the other aspect is the describing your surroundings, which so that's just as you come up to a road intersection, coming up to maybe 15 yards ahead, it'll describe the intersection, what road's to the left, if the road continues ahead, and that gives you, an idea of where you are. And then points of interest, which kind of vary. Points of interest vary from being, a post box or a transit stop, like a bus stop, or it could be a church or a school or shops, anything that's mapped in OpenStreetMaps. And basically, as you get close to them, if it's a really big thing, so this is all from the iOS Soundscape. If it's a church, it'll start calling them out from further away, because it's like, if you're a seeing person and you're walking around, you use landmarks to navigate, and you see the church, further away, whereas the post box you have to be a bit closer to. So it'll call it out from the direction. So it'll describe what it is. So it'll say Greg's. So Greg's is a popular going to say sandwich shop. I don't think that quite covers it, but it's a popular sandwich shop in the UK, and there's lots of Greggs around. But as you come up to a Greggs, it'll, in your headphones, if it's off to your left, over to the left, it'll say Greggs. And so you know that you're walking past Greggs. And it'll do that as you walk along, so it's describing as you go. And it, as Warren says, it kind of explore your...
Get to know my city.
Get to know my city, yeah. And as you walk around, so some people will set up routes in advance, so you can you can go on and make the route up on the map in advance. I'd say currently that's not very good for. We've got a little bit of work to improve that. If you're fully blind, then it's probably not as easy to do because it's quite it's map related. There is a places nearby which lists places, but I'm less convinced about how easy that is. But so we've got some work to do on some of the aspects, but basically using routes, setting up routes, and then you travel around and it tells you where you are.
Maybe my own approach is going to be a bit more people focused as well. Thanks, Dave. I remember the first day I fully tested out the app myself, and I just took the bull by the horns and closed my eyes for the duration of the test. And, yeah.
Tunde, you're brave.
Right there,
you do this outside.
Oh boy.
Right there, all around Calder Road in Edinburgh, Site Hill, close to the Edinburgh University, where it's quite populated. And my own simple definition would be whether you're a fully visually impaired person who is already using Soundscape, or you are a user about to start testing and using it. This is a wonderful solution that would, like Dave said, promote your confidence in getting from point A to point B, and to add a bit of icing to the cake would let you know the points of interest along the way, would let you know where you are in relation to the data that you've been able to work with on your hardware at that point in time. And the definition of getting things done is different for different people. But for the typical visually impaired person who is on whatever level of spectrum, this is a solution to assist in getting things done. Just from a people perspective, you want to be included in everything the regular person does. And this is one of the tools that can promote that confidence in helping you to be more included, in helping you to take that extra step to get things done, whatever your plan is to do for the day. And I remember when we first started the discussion, you mentioned you just want to wander around the city. That is something that may not look important to the other average ordinary user, but it's a priority for you. And this is what Soundscape is about. Understanding the requirements of the people involved, carefully translating those requirements into usable solutions and products to let them get things done. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point, because as blind people, exploring a city is something we never thought we'd enjoy, right? We're just like, we want to figure out how to get where we're supposed to get or how to get home, right? But now we have a tool that lets us do what everybody else does. If we want to, we can just go outside and walk down the street and find out what's there, which is, you've given us something that we haven't had in the past.
Yeah, so this an anecdote here, but so my daughter wanted to go to one of her friends. It was kind of a little late in the night, in the evening, and she wanted to spend the night there. And of course, we live in a little town, very safe town, but still, it's my daughter. I'm like, I'm gonna take you. I'm gonna walk you there. So I walked her to that house. Maybe. Like half a mile or thereabouts from where I'm at. And so I thought I was paying attention to the streets that we were crossing and all of that. And then when I started going back, left her at her friend's and started going back, then I realized I think I made a wrong turn. And to be honest, I had to pull out my phone and I said, "Hey, take me home." So if I had Soundscape, for example, at least it will let me know the street that I was crossing, because as we were going, I was asking her as to the streets that we're crossing. So I would confirm those streets now using that Soundscape when I come across them. And if I'm not getting those streets, then I'll know for certainty that I was actually going the wrong route. So I can see the usefulness of all of this. And yeah, it's a great tool.
Exactly. And the other thing is that our leadership and the executive are fully committed to relating with the right people for engagement and for promotions, and to make sure that this solution, which means a lot and helps so many people around the world to do a lot of good things, don't get packed up or switched off in the dark, potentially like before. And which is why we are also putting it out there to say, hey, if you're interested in volunteering and supporting, to make sure that we go through the different rounds of testing, to manage tickets as the user community starts or continues to grow, to help with translating languages. You'll be surprised at how many languages are there and how many people are using it from the remotest corners of the whole world because of its global footprint and impact. That's why we are asking, if you are the kind of person listening through this kind of medium, it will be awesome to have you to join the community of these people doing these things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. We're so thankful that you guys came out today and actually gave us your time. I know, of course, that dinner time is there. You've sacrificed that dinner time just to talk with us. But before you go, though, I want another commitment from you guys. In other words, when something happens and we reach out to you, we want you guys to come back. Kirsty, Tunde, and Dave, tell me you're going to come back.
Oh, we'll be back.
Oh, of course. Thank you very much. I'd be delighted.
And the reason why I'm saying this, because on October the 26th, so you probably want to put this on your calendars, we got our open listener session that usually we have listeners that come in. We just open it up for everyone. And so the last one that we had, we actually introduced a feature, or a segment in there where we actually brought in developers as well. So would like developers to join us again. This will be the second time that we have developers joining us, and because then listeners will be able to ask questions as well. So I want to see you guys, whatever it is, you have plans. I know sometimes we have plans ahead of time, but see if any of you could squeeze some time, even if it's like 10 minutes. You can go out at any time you want to, but I just want you guys to know that on October the 26th, we're going to have that open session, and I would love for you guys to come.
That'll be awesome.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Warren. We would be delighted. I'll send Dave and Tunde to answer developer questions. It's not for me.
Yeah, and if you can't, that's
But
fine.
thank you.
We'll definitely have you back after it's officially launched, or anytime you introduce new updates or something and want to discuss it more. We'll definitely feature you again.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, guys.
Appreciate the support.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much from the Scottish Tech Army.